Welcome to the video, and I'm going to talk a little bit about my FOB strategies, the different kinds of FOB that I build and how I use them and what's their purpose. I also love to discuss different tactics and strategies, so please leave a comment, let me know what you think about my way of doing it, and more importantly, let me know how you do it. Let's start with one of the most commonly seen FOBs, the defense FOB on defense cap. Here we see hilltop bunker cap on Gorodok, and the red dome, it shows the capture point radius. And if we are on defense and the enemy team get 3 more players than we have into that red dome, they will start to take that cap from us. Well, I think most of you guys know this is basic, it's a spawn on a cap, so your team can spawn on the cap and defend it. And if your team have the time and the resources, you can build more defensive structures, you can put down some heavy weapon systems to make it harder to attack and easier to defend. The second type of FOB we're going to talk about is the support FOB. A support FOB should be placed relatively close to the cap and have at least one kind of weapon system on it that it could use to in some way help defend the cap. It could be with direct or indirect fire towards enemies close or on their way towards that defense cap. It could be by positioning the FOB itself between the most likely approach of the enemies and the cap, which will force the enemies to either waste time and effort to try to destroy your support FOB or to relocate and try to attack the capture point from a less favorable position. And for those of you that have seen Moydog's new squad meta video and Talil video, I think this is what he refers to when he says that he is building a second objective that the enemies have to deal with before they can get on to the actual cap. But it's very hard to defend the cap from only a support FOB. If you play against a team with any kind of experience, they will just hit the cap from your blind spot, because it's almost impossible to place a support FOB in a way that you have a 360 cover around the cap. And I'm going to share my thoughts about what Moydog said on another video, but let's get on with this one. A support FOB should also be that close to the cap that it won't take more than 2 to 3 minutes to run from the support FOB into the cap radius. And why 2 to 3 minutes? It's simply because it takes 2 minutes for the enemies to neutralize your cap if they start to cap it, and then there's 2 more minutes until they fully cap it. So you need to be able to get in there within 2 to 3 minutes to stop them from taking your cap. And that's how I make a difference between a support FOB and a fire base. From a support FOB, you can actually spawn in as infantry and get into cap and actually make a difference on the cap, while on a fire base, you could be anywhere on the map. You could be 1,000 meters away from the closest cap, just, killing and disturbing the enemies with using your emplacements. So a good support FOB should not be further away than 3 minutes running time. And from that support FOB, you should be able to stop the enemy team's advance or at least severely slow them down. You also want to place your support FOB in a way that it denies the enemies access to areas that they want to control to do a successful strong push. Meaning that if the best approach for attackers are on the west side of the cap, you want to place your support FOB on the west side. And a good support FOB needs weapon emplacements to really get that extra firepower so you can shut down the enemy team when they try to push. Now it's time for the flank FOB. And this is one of my favorite FOBs to place when playing defense, because they don't take a lot of time setting up, they don't demand a lot of resources, and you don't actively have to have players there, so you don't have to waste manpower. So what's a flank FOB? Well, a flank FOB is a FOB you place so far away from the cap that there's just a small risk of enemies running into it when they're heading towards the cap or when they're going to place their own attack FOB. So if you look at the picture and you see that red area, that's the area where the enemies that's trying to attack hilltop bunker usually want to set up some kind of attack FOB. So how do we use our flank FOB? It's very easy. If we are defending and we're getting pressured from the west side, we simply spawn on our flank FOB out on the west side. And the good thing about it is that most of the time the attackers are so focused on pushing towards the cap that they won't even watch towards the opposite side. If they spawn in on their attack FOB in the red area, they will not look west, they will simply look towards the east. So we only need 1 or 2 guys to spawn on the flank FOB to locate the enemy FOB and have. And when that's done, you can decide if you want to mortar it, airstrike it, or maybe just send in the guys to block it and try to take it down themselves. And what I like to do in situations like this, if I'm on the cap defending it and we're getting pressured, is that I as a squad lead will spawn on the flank FOB with 1 more of my guys, and then I would move east a bit closer towards the enemies and then drop a rally. Now my squad have the ability to spawn in the cap and push out, and also from behind the enemies and push towards them. And now some words of wisdom and a warning before you use flank FOBs. If you are playing with a team that have a lot of inexperienced players and squad leads, they could be the destruction of your team. And that's because inexperienced players will just spawn anywhere they can and start running towards the fight. Let's say you have a FOB on the cap and it gets overrun or taken out, and you have a flank FOB that's about 1k away from the cap, and then you also have a Logi with a squad lead that's going to place a new FOB close to the cap. A lot of new players will just spawn on that flank FOB and run. They will run for 5-6 minutes instead of waiting 30 seconds to spawn close to the cap. A flank FOB should always be very well hidden. It should be placed in a way that the enemies will likely place their attack FOB between the cap and the flank FOB. You might not want to place a flank FOB if you have a lot of inexperienced players on your team. But if you have a team with some experience, it could be the cheapest, quickest, most efficient way to take down enemy attack FOBs. Okay, I see this video is getting longer than I planned to, so I'm gonna round it up real quick. We got 2 more FOBs to go. We got the counter FOB and we got the backup FOB. So a counter FOB is basically a flank FOB that you build knowing where the enemy has their FOB. If they build a FOB to attack your cap, you place one behind theirs and take it down. You could use mortars on your counter FOB to mortar down the enemy hab or radio, or you could just get a mass spawn and push in and clear out the enemies. Because the counter FOB is just a quick, temporary solution to take down the enemy attack FOB, you should always take him down when you have done that. And then we have the backup FOBs, which are simply an alternative spawn point on the outside of the cap instead of the inside, which helps minimize the risk of the enemy team surrounding your whole defense force and box you in on the cap. A backup FOB should be very simple and low-key, shouldn't have any emplacement and a lot of build on it that would give away the position. You want your backup FOB to be hidden while the enemy attack the cap. So if they overrun the FOB on the cap, you still have a hidden spawn that you can push back in towards the cap. So there you have it, and those are the different types of FOBs that I use while defending. I really hope to see that you guys leave some comments and tell me what you think about the way I do it, and it would be really interesting if you would tell me about how you do it.